Hey folks, welcome back. I guess welcome back isn't right. This is our first episode. Anyway, I do other podcasts, so it's a habit. But welcome to the show. We're going to be talking about Utah stuff because this is the Utah Down Ballot show. I have with me Aaron Bullen. Aaron, do you want to say hi real quick?
Howdy.
Hi.
And Kim Coleman.
Hi.
So, these are two folks that I've gotten to know over the last little while. And as I started looking at our situation, I'm just going to give a little bit of a preamble to the show just so that people know where I'm coming from with this and why I want to start it. I run a company. We do podcasts for software developers. Doing one that's conservative leaning probably won't make me as popular in the tech community, I will say. But that said, I mean, this stuff is important, and some of it scares the crap out of me. And I started looking at the situation, especially at the federal elections and things. And I thought, what can we do to fix this, right? Because as far as like the presidential election and stuff, I mean, as far as I can tell, it's basically too late to change it. But on the flip side, I'm super concerned about elections in 2024, 2020, 2022, right? And it's like, okay, so what do we do here? And the other thing is that a lot of the stuff that goes down that really messes with things is at the state level or the county level, right? I mean, here in Utah, our county officials run our elections. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to create these podcasts for each state and maybe even for, further local levels where we're looking at it and we're going, hey, how do we work at the state and local level to preserve our rights? How do we work at the state and local level to have elections that we can count on? How do we work at the state and local level in order to make sure that our schools are run the way that we want, that they're not teaching our kids insane things? And I realized that, that's where this is going to happen. And then if we can, build election integrity and protect our rights at that level, then it can bubble back up, right? It can go back to the federal level, or, our state attorney general can go and, file a suit and fight for our rights at that level. But instead we get caught up on the stuff like the presidential election. And I worry that we miss the boat on a lot of this stuff.
So, can I say something real quick?
Yeah, go for it.
You are absolutely right. Now we have a little bit of a cloud hanging over our Republican Party, people who are conservative, and we feel like, I should say, some people feel like all is lost. But we had these wise founding fathers that created this Constitution. The federal government was never intended to be the boss of all of us. In fact, the states really were empowered. And in the very title of what we are, our country is United States. States individually that came together to unite, to give the federal government some centralized government a little bit of power, a little bit. And the Constitution that the states united agreed on said, we're going to let the federal government do these few things. Everything else is left up to us. So for anybody who's discouraged that Republicans and conservatives no longer control the federal government, let's not lose sight of the fact that the federal government is supposed to be this big in our lives. Everything else
supposed to be.
Yes.
Supposed to be.
Supposed to be. That is a key word. The federal government is supposed to have this much impact in our lives. But to your point, we have let a lot of that go. And so we're going to have an amazing opportunity to show our to realize the power that states were supposed to have. So when you talk about 22 and 24, that's not where we should be looking. We should be looking right now. Our Utah legislature is in session. They are going to impact our lives in ways that we will like and ways we won't like. And so now's the time to be active in our state government. Now's the time to be looking at our sheriffs and asking what our sheriffs plan to do when the federal government wants to be more than we ever said collectively they could do. looking at our congressional delegation for, for being in a minority anyway, they should still be fighting the good fights. But right now, the next 40 days, the state legislature is in session, and we need to be eyes open, ears open, and ready to let these people know what we want them to do.
Yeah,
and
I
there are
mean,
two things I want to throw in here real quick regarding that. So one is that I feel like a lot of the political shows, they come out after the legislature has voted on this stuff, and they go, "Oh, that was so terrible," and I'm going, "We can call we need to be ahead of this stuff, right?" So yeah, that I that's where I'm looking, Kim.
what were you doing when the action was happening, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, 22 and 24 are when we hold them accountable, hopefully,
Yes.
if any of them get held accountable.
Yeah, but let's not wait
Yeah.
till election time.
Exactly. But we should be, working on this stuff,
Mhm.
right
We need to be
now.
paying attention to it now. And then, yeah, if they don't listen to us, then we can call that out in 22 when we're starting to look for candidates to run in the primary or to go to the convention or whatever, right? But for right now, yeah, let's go and stand up for what we believe in.
That's right. Now, Aaron Bolin is not at the Capitol
No, I look like I am.
because
But
he is not allowed to be at the Capitol right now. Now, let's be clear. The people are not allowed in the people's house, or by the way, on the people's house grounds. And yet the work of the people has begun.
Right.
And the understanding that I have is next week the Capitol will open and the people will be allowed in some limited form to engage with the business of the people, but it may be preferential to the people who write big checks to the legislators. It may be, we're hearing that registered lobbyists may get to move to the front of the line. In limited numbers, people will be allowed to access different areas of the Capitol, but only in limited numbers because COVID. But
so currently aren't, registered lobbyists being allowed in? Even though they've shut it down to the public, aren't registered lobbyists being allowed in? Because they've agreed to, take a COVID rapid test like 2 times a week, which I thought was, not the reason why they shut down the Capitol. I thought the reason was because of some imminent threat to the Capitol that required hundreds of National Guard troops to station up on the steps of the Capitol, which is costing us many hundreds of thousands of dollars a day, actually. And I'm not exactly sure what the specific threat was. I don't think that's been released. Maybe Kim has some more inside baseball on that.
well,
But
I think we need to, because this is our first show here, I need to know which of the Bible words I can use on this. because
Let her rip.
really being prompted. Anyway,
we should probably back up too and give everyone's background so that so people know where you're coming from, Kim and Aaron. I mean, yeah.
Well,
anyway,
everyone should know Kim. I mean, anyone who knows anything about Utah politics should know Kim. But maybe I'm just speaking from a Politico perspective.
I didn't know
you
Kim
probably
until she ran
wouldn't. You
for
probably
Congress,
wouldn't know who I am because I'm just, a citizen activist. I work with Pro-Life Utah, which is a charitable organization, tries to help women out if they're having crisis pregnancies. I'm also just conservative, and I really care about what's happening in the state, and I follow bills, and I try to rally troops to contact legislators and make an impact on how they vote. So that's why I'm here.
Okay, well, I'm a recovering legislator, I guess.
Recovering out of it.
Last 6 years in the Utah legislature representing West Jordan, South Jordan, and Harriman. Recently kind of laid that down and ran for Congress where I had the support of the Freedom Caucus, Jim Jordan, Mark Meadows, Andy Biggs. And so that can kind of tell you, where where my policy positions lie.
You're seeing my shirt right now, right,
Oh,
Kim?
yeah.
It's a beautiful color.
Yeah,
I
well,
had to wear it.
for most of us, those became car cleaning rags, but you're still using it as apparel. So I don't know about that, Aaron. But
Mainly a pajama shirt. I'm not saying that I slept in this, but I'm saying it's comfortable enough that I could have.
Well,
I have wishful thinking about some other elections that happened. Anyway.
Well, the thing about me too is that I've been like Aaron. I mean, I was like Aaron, a citizen activist on the Hill, writing letters, holding community meetings, bringing awareness, really being a part of the voice of the people. For a short time, I got to cast the votes. I'm very grateful for that. But, always knowing that I would be in a position of advocating for freedom, faith, family, liberty, whether I was casting the votes or not. And so I've left the legislature, but by no means am I leaving the legislature alone.
Well, you actually are this week because they've forced you to leave them alone, right? You can't go.
That for some real constitutional crises that we're experiencing. I got to tell you, I will tell you this. So having been through the process, understanding the vital role of legislation being tweaked, modified, amended, voted up, voted down. Legislation can have upwards of 11 or 12 decision-making points. And every step of that way, we, the people, have a say. And we call our legislators, we show up to committee meetings, we pass green notes, little notes into the people that are in committees or on the floor. To have that shut down is incredibly prohibitive to a clean process. If I was in there now, I would be advocating for, if we can't have the people engaged in the business of the people, then let's not do the business of the people until there's an appropriate time that we can have adequate interaction. And so there's a little bit of Band-Aid on this. You've got people, they're setting up special Zooms that you can Zoom with your legislator instead of trying to meet them in a hallway. Some legislative lobbying is more passive than that. Sometimes when a citizen would contact me, it's a very personal and private, maybe a sensitive situation they want to share with me. To relegate the people to log into a Zoom that may or may not be recorded, to just text your legislator, just email your legislator, which absolutely do that. But there were times when I needed, or a citizen needed to have an in-person meeting because they didn't want a record of their sexual assault, of some kind of abuse, of some kind of whistleblowing. So to not have really free, open, adequate, robust interaction with the people, I think it's not a good idea to then try to conduct the business of the people.
And may I point out that when you schedule a Zoom, it has to be scheduled. They can agree to it, or they can disagree, or they can say they're busy, whether or not they're busy. When you're at the Capitol and you see a legislator, even if they're on their way to the bathroom, you can chase them down and talk to them. I've literally run after legislators before. They had one of their breaks where everyone comes out and chit chats, and I had to chase down 3 female legislators that were all jogging around the top of the top floor of the Capitol. They do their speed walk, so had to chase down Carrie Ann, Melissa, and Susan, so I could chat about a pro-life bill that I was interested in. So, but if you're there, it's a completely different experience. So, Kim, maybe we can talk about this process that you're talking about of how a bill becomes a law and what those decision points are, and how we can make an impact on those decision points.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's a great place to start. So Charles, I appreciate Charles' role to put a microphone in front of his face and bring people in to discuss issues. There are just so many ways to impact the policymaking process, and using whatever talent you have, resources you have, don't be afraid to use them. So I just want to start there. Any way that we can help you understand, first of all, the process, second, how to insert yourself in the process, and the right ways. Really don't stop somebody as they're about to go into the bathroom. But but if you can speed walk with Carrie Ann Lisenby, I found that my I just wanted to be always accessible to the people. So if I'm trying to get a walk in, walk with me. That's not the time that I'm trying to escape you. It's a time that I'm trying to survive healthfully for 45 days. So, right now, I mean, very fundamentally, bills to move through the process are assigned to committees. And I don't know how much we can do this. Maybe at some point we maybe can screen share, maybe next time, screen share so I can walk you through how to even find a bill. But if you go, just Google Utah State Legislature, look around on that page, you're going to find how to search for bills. And once you find bills by interest or by the specific bill, you can then click a box to be able to follow that bill. So now you're going to get either a text message or an email, whatever you decide, that's going to tell you where that bill is in the process, or if all of a sudden a bill popped up that is along one of the subject interests that you've clicked. So we really, as a state, we really do have a very, very open and transparent process. You can find this, but sometimes it just takes knowing where to start to look.
So can I say that, it is transparent, but you have to know what you're doing. And I mean, this was really difficult for me when I got, started in activism, and that was just about 4 to 5 years ago. But it's also not very user friendly. So, I mean, I have the website pulled up, Kim. If you kind of want to talk as I go through some of these things, we can just show where some of the items are.
Yeah, Charles, do we have the ability to let?
I can hit screen share button. Okay, cool.
I can let you do that. Hang on.
Let me.
Oh yeah. Yeah, all participants can share.
Okay. So we're looking at the Utah.
Just to chime in here, because I know Aaron, you're pretty involved in the pro-life movement. By the way, I'm planning on making sure this is out well in advance of people being able to go to the March for Life in Salt Lake City, 11 a.m. up the Capitol, and we're driving down to like 90th South. So I'm just gonna promote that right now. But the other thing is like for me, I'm on a charter school board, and so all of the education stuff is really interesting to me, right? And I care about that, and so this is what I needed. And I'm kind of a rank amateur because I got involved last time. I didn't even know the precinct chair was stepping down, and nobody wanted the job, so I stepped up, and then I felt like I needed to do it, and then I realized the power of the process and the system and how to get involved just on that level. And so this is critical to me to know what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, to Charles's point, the only reason I'm involved right now is because I showed up to a funny sounding meeting called a caucus for the Republican Party, what's 5 years ago now. And someone nominated me to be a delegate, and I had no clue what that was. And I was elected against, my better wishes, but I started to get involved, and I did my duty as a delegate. I had to figure out what that was, and I started to love being involved in the process. So just to move on from there, this is the legislature's website, le.utah.gov. You'll hear every legislator say that a million times. But when I go to here, if I'm looking at what's gonna be going through the legislative session, I'll go to this bills page. It says right here, 2021 general session. That's what we're doing right now. And on the left side, you can go to a few different pages. You can go to list of bills here, which I'll open. bills in committee, and tracking service is what it says down here. And this is really useful. You have to set up an account, but then you can track bills. And that's what I say is kind of clunky. I wish that I was able to do this in a better method than just receiving email updates on each one of these. They used to have an app that worked for Android. I think it may still work for iPhone. Do you know, Kim? I know they never updated the app for Android, and so the
if it's on Google or Apple platform, only if they're liberal bills. Just
they won't show you the conservative bills. I don't know how true
Sometimes
that
it
is,
feels that
Kim.
way.
I don't know.
Well, you know what? Why don't we? So I'm getting text messages today about a bill that a lot of my supporters care about, and that's constitutional carry. So this is the very first week of the legislature. It goes almost 7 weeks, but we already today had a couple bills in committee that are concerning to me and or things that I care about. So constitutional carry.
So constitutional carry is right here. So I'm already tracking that bill, HB 60, concealed carry firearm amendments by Representative Walt Brooks. And
can I press pause for a second?
Yeah.
Is the first week all committee, or do they actually go and pass?
Okay.
It just any bill, all of the bills have to go through committee before. They have to go through rules committee, then they have to go through whatever committee they're assigned to, which is a committee of legislators, and then they vote on whether or not that's going to be heard on the House or Senate floor, depending on if it's a House bill or a Senate bill.
Now, something that's important to know is during the off season, the legislature meets about once a month, and they hear bills in committee then. And those off season, it's called interim. Those interim committee meetings are made up of both Senate members and House members. And so if they approve a bill together, that sort of bypasses the need for a committee at the beginning of the session. So the first week, you will see bills that go straight to one of the floor votes, and they haven't been through a committee yet. And that's why, because they've already gone through an interim committee process. But from there, a normal bill will either start in the House or the Senate, get assigned to a committee, where then it has to be voted on before the full body can vote on it.
So one of those bills that was passed through an interim committee is called riot amendments, and I'm following that one because I think it's a good bill. And if I go here to the riot amendments bill, you can see that it's sponsored by Rep. Wilcox.
Which, by the way, welcome back to Ryan Wilcox. He served in the legislature briefly before Senator Mike Lee grabbed him to go work for him. So now he's back, and so good. We're expecting good constitutional.
Well, thank goodness. Yeah, he is a good representative. And he still looks too young to be in the legislature. Imagine what he looked like when he was in the legislature before. He looked like a young spring chicken. Anyway, so you can see that it was passed through interim committee because it says committee note, the Law Enforcement and Criminal Justice Interim Committee recommended this bill, legislative vote, 10 voting for, 3 voting against, Democrats, 3 absent. So that would be one of those bills that had a interim committee vote before.
You know, while you're right there, can you click on the status?
Yeah, to see if it's gone through any votes. So if you go to the status, you can see it was numbered. You can see that House received the bill from Ledge Research, and that it was introduced in Rules Committee. So it hasn't been out of Rules and into a legislative committee. And from that committee, it can go to floor, and then it goes to the other House, the other chamber committee, and then it can go to the other chamber's floor vote, and then it's signed by the governor, and then it's made into a law.
Well, if you want to see who voted for or against that bill in the summertime, you'll have to kind of go.
So that's more difficult to find. You have to go to committees and what committee it was on, and committees interim.
So can
But
we just
that's
look
why
at
I say it's clunky. It's not
so,
always easy to find things.
so can we back up and look at the concealed carry permit, because
Yeah.
that was in committee today.
So
And
this right here is just my list of tracked bills. I
Yeah.
have too many already, but
yeah, let's have a look at that concealed
yeah.
carry one.
So concealed carry, it doesn't say that it had a committee vote, did it?
maybe the committee hasn't happened. I know it was up.
Okay.
in
It says,
today, but maybe not.
so it says that it was introduced in rules and then it was assigned a committee. It was assigned the House Judiciary Committee. And you can go to hearings and debate. You can go to House Judiciary Committee in the agenda. And if you go to the agenda, it should tell us what time that's happening, 2 p.m. So it's not over
right now.
So it's probably happening right now. It could probably, so if you actually want to watch it, you go to this link and you have to click on a new button for participate virtual meeting or live audio video. Anyway, it's all kind of outside the scope, but then
So
you can go.
should pull it up live right there and we can
Yeah.
see what's happening in that committee. Of course, still partially virtual.
Yeah. So I'll go ahead and mute it, but you can see that this is the committee happening right now.
So you can really, as the public, you can watch this live. You can watch it tonight when you get home from work. You can, click on it and watch that committee hearing, listen to the discussion, track those committee meetings to see what bills they're going to have. But so, I see Representative Travis Segmiller. I see Craig Hall. These are people that I might be texting right now and telling them how I want them to vote on this bill. So for me as a legislator, texting was my preference on hearing from you. Emails can kind of get better or buried, but text messaging is real live. I'm looking at Clark Aposhian. So apparently—
Is he legislative? I'm sorry, he's the Utah Gun Sports?
Yeah, so apparently he's probably giving testimony.
Yes.
To the committee on this bill, which is something you can do as a citizen, is you can raise your hand and speak to the bill. Normally in the physical setting, there would be a period where the chair would invite anybody to approach the stand and say what they want to say. With the virtual setting, there's also, a way to do that.
Looks like they're using Zoom and you can just raise your hand.
Yeah, raising your hand. And but
so I'm not able to, be part of the Zoom. I'm able to view the Zoom when I look at this version, but to participate, I have to click on the participate button and I think put in some of my information.
Yeah, but it is a Zoom web link, so it would actually kick you out of this meeting and take you to that one.
Yeah.
But I can't stress this enough to people. One citizen approaching the microphone, one citizen giving, sending a text message is very, very powerful, especially if you are my constituent. I'm really listening to you. And I want people to understand that the legislature is very approachable. Legislators, they want to hear from you. Most of them.
Most of them. This one, maybe not.
But don't worry about if you feel polished in your language, or you're nervous about public speaking, or you're afraid to use the wrong words, or the people on the stand are regular people and nobody's judging you if you stumble on your words. We just really want to hear from you. And so I just encourage you to do that. I'll tell you, here's a little side story. I have a 17-year-old that he came into my room yesterday and said, "Hey, I got this email from the school board member." And he reads this to me and I go, "Why is she writing to you?" And he says, "Well, because I wrote to her." And well, now half the school board has written back to him and replied to him. And I think, boy, that is the process. And my 17-year-old high school kid, maybe a little bit by example, but is not afraid to reach out to the people who are making policies affecting his life. And so just don't be afraid to do that. Engage your legislator and don't wait till election time. Do it now while you care about how they vote.
Well, one other thing I just want to jump in here and back you up on this is like growing up, I found out who my state legislators were, right? And they were just people in my neighborhood, right? The
Right.
Sesame Street song, these other people in your, but your legislators are, I mean, they live in the city you live in, or, the one next over, right? um, you may pass them in the grocery store and not even know. They're just regular people. And I think sometimes we kind of get this idea, well, they're legislators and they're not, but they're
They're not
just
real
regular people.
special. They're really not all that special.
Yeah. Well,
Well,
and you
yeah, I
look at
mean,
like, I mean, even Governor Herbert, right? People were protesting at his house in Orem because the dude lives in Orem, right? I mean, he's just a guy. And so, yeah, if you want to reach out to these people, don't be intimidated.
Exactly.
and I think that's a pretty big deal because when I started like vetting candidates as part
Mhm.
of the caucus convention system, I was nervous. I'm like, maybe I don't know what to ask. I wasn't all that knowledgeable about policy and what I didn't and did believe, and it was hard to get a moment in to talk to these candidates as a lot of other delegates were trying to speak to them. But yeah, it don't be nervous. You don't need to start
Yeah.
off like I was, because they're nervous too. I mean, they're just people, and they're. uh, I'm not trying to use this as a dig, Kim, but they're not necessarily smarter or more
That's for
more
damn
skilled
sure.
than you are,
That's for
and
damn sure.
and and
Chose to use my Bible word there.
and I'm not a lawyer. I'm an engineer by profession, but I found things in bills that legislators sponsored that they didn't want to be in there and that they didn't know were going to cause a problem, just because I read the bill and I said, look what you did. You didn't specify this specific section, therefore we're not going to get the information that's needed
Mhm.
out of this bill. Um, so you kind of realize pretty quick that we're all human, and even the governor, even Spencer Cox, is just a normal guy, and they might put on a facade or a veneer, especially when they're on TV. Uh, but they're just normal like you. Treat them like it.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's how our government was created, is to be that
Mhm.
way. I have a dog that can open my office door. I'm just saying, this is Lily.
Hi, Lily.
I have a child that can open my office door.
I have
Similar.
5 of
So,
those. I had to train them. I had to house train my 5 children.
oh my, there will be no training. I
Yeah.
have 5 under the age of 8. So
Well,
there.
and
Wow.
one of them, we are already grooming to be a future president and governor, and so I'm hoping she does join.
She could do it. She has an older brother who's 2
Mhm.
years older than her, and I told my oldest son straight up, she's going to be babysitting you before you're allowed to stay home without supervision. She's that organized and responsible. It's great. Anyway,
Yeah.
I digress.
Yeah. So, I guess one thing that I wanna make sure we cover here, and I'm kinda aiming for about an hour discussion, is so what's coming up over the next week, right? Because it's Friday today, and let's say I get this out on Monday, people listen to it, and they're like, "Okay, so what should I care about?" Like, what bills are you watching that are gonna go through committee or get a floor vote within the next week that we can all go, "Okay, that I need to be concerned about, or that I need to make sure they know to support it."
So we're going to have over 1,000 bills introduced in the session, or at least drafted and beginning in the process. We're going to end up with about 500 or so of those that will pass. And then the governor will have the opportunity to review and where he will veto or sign them into law. Even as a legislator, I did not always know what bills were out there until I saw them in the news, or I got an email from somebody. And typically I know what's coming in my committees. I'm watching those bills. And then as they come to the floor for everybody to vote, sometimes those are the first time I'm finding out about them. And so there's a lot of moving parts, and things are going to move very quickly. And so that's the thing I would impress upon you is if you care about some things, start looking into them now. Look at advocacy groups maybe that are aligned with you. For instance, I got a text message from a leader from the Well Armed Woman organization. So they are following Second Amendment bills. Clark Opposition, there's a number of Second Amendment organizations. So sometimes you can go to them and find out about bills. So you don't hear about them after they've passed and you didn't like the bill. Aaron's mentioned, pro-life groups, if that's the thing you care about, education groups. So, if you don't want to swim through the search bars of the legislature page, find groups that are watching these bills and they'll help you stay abreast of those.
So I'm kind of late in the game this year for the legislature because I've been working so hard on the March for Life, or rather the car caravan for life. That's coming up next Saturday.
I'm taking my kids, all 5 of them.
So it starts at 11, but you want to be there at 10 so you can like affix flags to your car if you're going to buy a yellow flag that says life, or any other flags you have, like an American flag, and decorate your car if you have car paint or chalk or silly string or what have you. Anyway, yeah, come early, 10 o'clock at the Capitol. We start at the Utah State Capitol, and then we go to 90th South. Okay, that's my plug for the March for Life. Anyway, I've been working on that. And so what I like to do, which is super nerdy, is I go through all the bills. and sometimes I decide that I don't care about a bill just by looking at the title of it. But usually I go to the bill, I look at the short description, I decide if I care, and then I'll decide whether or not I put that in my tracking list. And I've only gone through 250 so far. As I told you, I'm late start. But as Kim said, not everyone is Aaron Bullen and wants to do that. In fact, Aaron Bullen doesn't even want to do that, but I feel like I have to. If you want to just concentrate on certain bills, you can go to these different advocacy groups. Libertas, which is a libertarian kind of think tank policy advocacy organization, they have a list of the bills that they're tracking, what position they have, and they actually have a good system that will tell you when bills are in committee. It's a little bit more sophisticated than the actual government's system, the actual legislative website system. For Pro-Life Utah, we just have, one bill that we're tracking, and, we have a blog post about it on prolifeutah.org. And other groups, like I was discovering information about the League of Women Voters, and so I went to the League of Women Voters Utah, and I looked through all their bills. Oh, yeah, I know, Kim's shaking her head. I'm not telling you that they're a good organization. They're terrible. It's not the League of Women Voters, it's the League of Hyper Progressive Women.
Also with a national presence too. So
yeah, and they have a national organization, so they're well funded. They are tracking like 40 bills, and they want all.
I get an email from the Utah Association of Public Charter Schools.
Right? I get those emails too.
I'm involved in the charter school. Yeah,
for charter school legislation. And so there's not like really a list of these advocacy organizations because they're not governmental organizations, right? You kind of need to just discover them and say, where do my principles, my values align?
Americans for Prosperity is another.
Yeah.
Eagle Forum has long been kind of a faith and family organization. So yeah, kind of finding groups that are out there watching and doing some of the heavy lifting on
Grassroots Utah. Trying to think of the ones that
.org.
Yeah. There's ones that I care about. There's ones that I definitely don't like Alliance for a Better Utah, or as it's more aptly called, Alliance for a Bluer Utah, which is literally a front organization in Utah for George Soros. And I'm not just saying that as a conspiracy theorist. They're actually funded by George Soros. They're a subsidiary of Progress Now, which was founded by him. So anyway, and he sits on the board. But anyway, so yeah, don't listen to anything they say. You can go there and they have a scorecard for legislators, kind of like Pro-Life Utah does, and Libertas has scorecards for legislators. And if they're getting an F with Alliance for a Better Utah, they're probably a great legislator.
It's good to know.
I really didn't do well with the teachers union. So.
Oh man, there's good education advocacy organizations, but not the teachers union.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because my mom's a teacher, a high school teacher, and so she's a member of the union, and at the same time, well, because they offer all kinds of benefits and stuff, but at the same time, then she votes completely against 90% of their values, so it's just funny.
And what they tell you to vote for. My wife was.
I don't know if she's that involved that way. Like
my wife was a high school teacher, and they would always bug her. They'd send out their union reps and say, "Why aren't you part of the union?" She'd say, "Because I don't support you."
Yeah.
So that there are people who support education that do not support the teachers union.
Yeah. Yeah. At least she said she was a member a few years ago. So anyway.
So speaking of education, if I can go off on a little tangent, you were talking about, local school boards. I'm pretty involved with the state school board, but when we pay attention to only these national things and what actually pops up in the news, even at the state level, we miss a lot of what's going on underneath the surface, which is even harder to find. And there's a lot of nefarious things getting pushed at the state school board right now. And there's a lot of things getting implemented that, a few people are trying to fight against, that are trying to protect your children from learning shady things, right? And I mean, those are also, fights that we need to get involved in. I mean, right now, hyper concentrated on legislative session. But, just 2 months ago, I was, emailing state school board members and trying to help them understand why certain resolutions should not be adopted and certain teacher trainings should not be implemented. And it's looking like we may lose half that battle, but it's because we need more people in our corner. There's more people that agree with us than that disagree with us, but it's just hard to get the message out and communicate with everyone, especially when you're kicked off Facebook and Parler.
And there are some tactics to timing. And while there is so much hyper focus on the legislature, while the past several months there was the focus on national elections, that's when a lot of things can slip through because we're not paying attention. Now my dog cannot get out of the office, but I have
he's your sidekick.
That's our world, right? The dog needs out of the office. Tell you what I'm watching. Number one, if you know me at all, I'm big on process. Process inherently involves safeguards, backstops, and good process is most likely to ensure that we end up with best outcomes. So when I see process either impeded or negated or disregarded, that's where I'm concerned. So number one, for this legislative session, I'm looking at process. And let's just, start from the top where the people have been inhibited in their ability to insert themselves in the process. I can't state strongly enough how scary that is. And the Band-Aids that have been implemented are just simply not the same as when we had full access of public participation. Number two, there are other legislative tactics that impede the process. And this is where I want people to understand that sometimes this happens. We have separation of powers, and at the federal level, at the state level, that says, you know, we have equal and separate power, and we place checks on one branch of the government or the other, so that no individual or individual office can gain excessive power and control. So right now the legislature is in focus. The legislature is who legislates. The executive branch, it's in the title, executes the laws of the land as promulgated by the legislature. But too often the governor's office wants to be the legislature. And sometimes you've got the governor whispering over to the Speaker of the House or over to the Senate President, don't bring me such and such bill because I'm just going to veto it anyway. And sometimes you'll have those leaders, they'll come back and tell us as legislators, well, you know, I know you want to see this done, but the governor's just going to veto, so let's don't waste our
And
time.
what was said in yesterday's State of the State address by Governor Cox? I think he said, I'm going to veto more bills than any of my predecessors.
Now, okay.
That was a call out to say, don't run anything I don't like. I will just veto it. And unfortunately, a lot of legislators cower in that situation. They get scared and they say, "Okay, my principles are out the window. I don't want to lose. I don't want my bill to get vetoed. I'll just look bad, and I don't want the governor to, put a target on my back." So they quit.
So that can have a chilling effect on a process. At the very least, a tactical impact of deterring legislation from going through the right process. You know what I say to that? Veto my damn bill. But I had this happen. I had this actually happen with.
But you're one of like 5 good ones, Kim.
So Lieutenant Governor Cox, as Lieutenant Governor last year, I had a bill dealing with our homeless, inaccountability, lack of transparency, big, huge boondoggle in our state. So I had a bill. It had been worked on by lots of people. We had lots of people giving input to this bill. It really was such good policy that even sort of our national homeless czar got wind of it, came to town and met with me and said, oh my gosh, this is the best policy. This is the policy we need really across the country. But Lieutenant Governor Cox sent a note in to me with, I'm not kidding, this is the bill I want you to run. I'm going to veto your bill. If you want something to pass, here's the bill you'll run. Holy cow. Holy cow. That is extremely offensive to me as a legislator because, you know, Mr. Cox, Lieutenant Governor Cox, if you want to be in the legislature, go run again. But your job is, you don't like my bill, veto it. But what you don't do is,
well, at the time he couldn't even veto it, but he kind of had
the lieutenant.
He had the puppet strings of Herbert at the time.
Well, you know, and I'm sure the lieutenant governor does have, you know, influence on if a bill gets vetoed or not. But it was offensive and it was wrong for him to want me to substitute my bill for his bill. So clearly he, you know, he wants to be a legislator, but ran for governor instead. So these are the kind of tactics I'm very, very concerned about. I'm hoping that my former colleagues and they're a great new group of freshman legislators, I hope they recognize that let's don't play into those tactics. Governor doesn't like the bill, then veto it. And then the legislature can decide if they want to override it. But sometimes, you know, even the legislature, maybe they're hard issues that sometimes they maybe don't want to be on the record themselves for passing or voting yes or no. So sometimes it's kind of easy to say, well, we didn't have the numbers to pass, or, well, you know, the governor was going to veto it. That's chicken. And people are not, they're not elected to be passive on the things that really matter. So I'm hoping that my former colleagues and the new freshmen, they have courage to do some strong things and some good things. What I'm watching in particular that that I'm concerned about is, will they pass legislation that limits emergency declarations? And basically, what happened in the last almost 11 months is that the governor did take over legislative power, completely shattered separation of powers. But we were told repeatedly, oh, there aren't the numbers in the legislature to override him or anything like that. You know what? Take a vote. Take a vote.
They didn't want to be on record.
And so some people just don't want to be on record for that. I don't admire that. I don't admire that. And I made hard decisions. And decisions that I was going to have to go back and answer to the public. Fine to do that every day of the year. But so I'm hoping the legislature does take on the whole the ability that the governor has exercised to remove separation of powers and to shut down the legislative process. I'm hoping they really take care of that. Some of the things that scare me are that we've already seen that the people are far, far too willing to lay down some of their rights out of fear or out of concern, legitimately or not, over the coronavirus. I'm very concerned about what's going to happen with vaccines. Get the vaccine if you want the vaccine. I'm glad my dad, elderly with COPD, got the vaccine. I don't want it, and I sure as heck don't want my kids to have it. So I'm hoping we have legislators that will honor freedom and liberty, personal choice, and health privacy of individuals, and make sure that people are never required by business or government to demonstrate their health status related to a vaccination. So those two things, can we safeguard our separation of powers in our state? Because when the governor's making all the choices, the people are not there. The people elect legislators to make policy. When the governor makes policy, he was not elected to do that. So those are the things that concern me the most this session. And then we're going to have perennial things,
Well, Kim, do you know of any legislation that's along those lines in terms of reining in the executive emergency powers?
So,
I mean, my biggest concern is all of the power that we've delegated to health departments and unelected officials that we can't hold accountable, except we did convince the health department director in Utah County to resign, but that's another story. But
I include health departments in the executive branch. Those are
yeah. So it's part of the executive branch, but I mean, we shouldn't be allowing them to make these massive decisions about where we can go and where we can't go and what we can eat and not eat, and if your job is important enough for you to make money or not. No one should be able to determine if my job is essential or if I'm allowed to work at my office or at my house. So, I mean, the government shouldn't be able to determine that. If my company determines that I need to, not work there for a certain amount of time or at my house, I'm fine with that. But yeah, just giving that power to the health department and a bunch of bureaucrats that, quite honestly, are not that expert in their field. I mean, they're not doctors. Most of them aren't. Like, sometimes they contract with doctors just to have somebody for reference. But sorry,
No, it's fine. I mean, that's the thing that I had conversations with people, right? It's like, I talked to people about some of the measures that the governor took, this last year, and they were like, well, yeah, I like some of the stuff he's doing. And my point was, yeah, but when he goes too far, it's just him, right? There's no debate, there's no conversation, there's no way for us to petition him. That there's none of that, right? And instead, if the legislature, calls a session and they sit down and they have a discussion about it, I know who to call. I can call my representative. I can call my state senator and I can go, hey, these are the things that I'm worried about, and this stuff can happen. But, and then they have all these other people who are paying attention to this stuff who can come together as the legislature and hopefully come up with something better. But if it's just the governor or just the health department head or just somebody else, I mean, that's the part of it that's scary. I mean, that's the whole purpose. That's why we split away from England, is because the king was making all these, unilateral decisions. And that's
I remember one time me and a bunch of other people were trying to, lobby the governor not to, issue a stay-at-home order and or extend an emergency order. We've done it both times, but for the no stay-at-home order, we were all calling, and we get in touch with a secretary, and they basically mark you off with a tally. It's not like you actually get to say words to the person making the decision. You just become a check mark. But they cut off the phone line, so no one else could call.
Yeah.
And they just decided that they're not listening to anyone else, and all the calls were coming in, against the executive action, and they made it anyway. So you're right. You get a lot better representation locally than you do from the governor. Trying to lobby him specifically is most of the time, a losing battle.
Well, and so, but again, the legislature, if you go in the legislative chamber, there's a big sign, a big kind of plaque on the wall that says Vox Populi. It's the voice of the people. And that is where your voice is with the legislature making policy. And I didn't always agree with the outcomes of, 1,000 bills in the legislature. But I will tell you, I trust 100%, 104 people backed by the voice of 3 million people working on public policy, then one man, his lieutenant, and I don't care if he's got 100 advisors, they're not the voice of the people. And you're never going to have the best decision made when the governor is in that policy-making chair, when he is legislating. We will never have a better decision from one man than 104, even if I don't always agree with 104. The process is what makes it a better decision.
Yeah, well, and I think one other thing, we're already over time, but I want to just point this out too. When you're talking about the emergency powers that the governor has, so the Constitution, our state Constitution, kind of draws boxes around what everybody gets to do, right? And then the legislature can delegate certain powers to the executive, but they can also rein those back in. And they kind of get to define that box a little finer in certain areas. And so that's what we're talking about here. Is when he overstepped, was that authority given by the legislature, and was it appropriate? And so then, if it was or wasn't appropriate, can the legislature step in and say, okay, next time we have an emergency, you can do these things, but not those things. And then we don't suffer for some of the decisions he's making.
So there is a whole body of work in the courts that have looked at when legislatures have inappropriately delegated too much. And it's an interesting thing to study. I mean, I did a little bit of a dive into that about 2 years ago. And they may give purely administrative duties away. They may not give legislative duties away. And there's a difference. But what happened with the governor is I think that there's the interpretation that we gave administrative duties away when he in fact took on legislative duties. And sometimes those aren't very black and white, those lines. But those should either be adjudicated in the court, or even better, the legislature should have called itself into session and deliberated on whether some policy that was put in place decades ago, never anticipating a pandemic, whether that should be quickly revisited and deliberated on, and maybe those policies changed. So
I was surprised how clear it is in the code that you can't give that rule-making authority to the executive or
In the Constitution. That's in our.
yeah, it's in the Constitution of
Right.
Utah. You can't give that rulemaking authority, but we let them do it anyway because we didn't challenge it. It's not, somebody has to sue, somebody has to make a stink, or else you can go against what's clearly stated in our law and get away with it. And the problem is they don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to make the governor mad, because then the governor might retaliate and veto one of their bills that he's on the edge about. He might talk to, the Senate president and the Speaker of the House and say, don't let any of this person's bills through committee because I want to make them look bad because I have a vendetta. You'd like to imagine that our legislators are better than that. Are you joking, Kim? Yeah. You would expect our legislators not to be petulant children, but a lot of the time they are. So if you have kids of your own, you understand that you have to work within that system. And that's why I always say I wish we had more legislators with backbone who are willing to do the right thing, even if that means suffering the consequences. And that's Kim Coleman.
I know. How do we get you back in the government, Kim?
She was the legislator in the Utah House with the most backbone. No, seriously, she was the best member.
Yeah.
And I like to say that the best member of the Utah House now is Carrie Ann Lisenby. It might be, toss up for the top spots there. But.
Watch John Johnson in the Senate.
I was going to say he's probably the best member of the Senate, and it's his first term.
And he's not tried yet, but I'll tell you what maybe makes him one to watch, and probably me, is I'm independent. I didn't have anybody putting pressure on me. They're not threatening my job, my livelihood, anything that I care about outside of the legislature. So I could completely put my 40,000 voters first. And you do have a lot of legislators that's the case, but being independent is, there's nothing like that. So, and John Johnson, he's very independent. Despite his job, he's extremely independent. Senator Kennedy has been elected back to the state legislature.
Thank goodness.
Super high hopes for that. And my successor, Jordan Tusher. But we've got some strong young legislators. We've got Representative Brady Brammer is the one taking on the executive powers, emergency declarations, Candace Perucci, Steve Christiansen. We do have some good, strong legislators that are going to have impactful bills this year. And so I'm very hopeful. But so, kind of wrapping this up, Charles, then we can come back and start, talk about specific bills again. For this beginning podcast, I just like to kind of circle back to making sure that people know that they can plug themselves in the process and follow the process and be involved and not be intimidated by that process, while we're also making sure we have an eye to what our local school boards are doing, state school board, our city councils. And like I said, I'm looking to our sheriffs, our local sheriffs. Are they ready to fight against any unconstitutional mandates that come from the federal government? So we have a lot to do to be hyper vigilant and eyes open, ears open, working together. And we got a lot of work to do.
Yep. So I guess I want to kind of throw out a challenge to people. Go check out the le.utah.gov. Just pick a topic you're interested in. I think we got a really nice run through there. And then reach out to people. Reach out to somebody and let them know that you support or you're concerned about something. And let's get involved in the process, because I worry that, and then I think somebody said this earlier, I worry that, people are being silent because they don't know how, or they feel intimidated. And there are a lot more people, I think, that agree with the general principles that I think the three of us have kind of come together on than there are that aren't. And so, if we make our voices heard, we should be able to influence the process so that we maintain our rights, maintain our, the integrity of the government, and get the outcomes that we're looking for from our government.
Aaron Bolin has a great Facebook page. He'll throw up things he's watching. That's a good place to start.
Yep.
Well, thank you for the plug, Kim. So I was also elected to be a national delegate for the GOP this year, which kind of turned out to be a bust because we couldn't hold our convention. But I do have my Facebook page for that. It's Aaron Bolin, national delegate. Thought about changing the name now that the duties have kind of ended, but it's stuck. I gave out some names to the membership of that group, and everyone thought the other names were dumb, so I never changed it. So I guess I'm a national delegate forever now. But yeah, I spout off my opinions on pretty much everything. That's one of my weaknesses, is being a loudmouth. Also one of my strengths. So yeah, you can go there and follow my stuff there. And just to what Charles was saying, it is intimidating, and as I said, sometimes the website's not super easy to use. There's a lot of bills. If you want to just look at one topic, you can actually search bills by topic. You can say only education bills. You can say only abortion bills, only parking ticket related bills. There's some that I'm following that make it harder to give out parking tickets, which is good. Maybe they won't be so predatory at BYU anymore.
I was gonna say, sounds like you have a story there.
Oh, too many stories, Kim. Too many.
Yeah.
Don't do a background check on me. There's a few of those.
Yeah, I went and looked at the education bills, and it's amazing the breadth that they had in there too. And it's just like, okay, these 5 or 6 are things that I'm really actively thinking about it. And then there are another handful, right, that I'm going, I hadn't even thought of that. And they're going to be talking about it. So
education tends to take up a lot of bills. I mean, a lot of bills in that category, despite the fact that there is,
and most of our money. And, yeah, my general goal for education bills is less of them. A lot of them become vendor bills and special favor bills, and they just make the job of teachers harder, and they convolute everything, and all those things go to the state school board, and those become like 10 more rules each. And it's sometimes you think you're doing everyone a favor, and really you're just trying to make yourself look good. I'm speaking for the legislators.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and push us to wrap up here. I'd like to make sure that we're doing this every week, even after the legislative session, just be talking about how people can stay on top of this stuff. Because like the school board, they meet regularly. There are other agencies and other things that we need to be paying attention to. And, and then this time next year, we're going to be heading into an election, and we should be talking about that too. So.
Well, thank you so much, Charles.
Yep. All right, folks. Well, we'll be back next week. We'll probably be talking a little bit more about the legislative session. And I really appreciate all of the things that I've learned from you two over the last hour and 20 minutes.
All righty. Well, see you next week.
Yeah.